You're listening to English with Monty, the podcast about the English language. Today is 8-Minute English, talking about punctuation, part 1. Hi there, welcome to 8-Minute English. I've got Gideon on the show. It's going to be difficult to fit Gideon into 8 minutes, but I can try. Don't make any smart comments. We've got to go now. So we're going to do it on punctuation. Where should we start? Apostrophes, maybe.
Is that a question?
Yeah.
So
What do you think?
You're reflecting on things.
I'm reflecting on some way. So apostrophes are something that people get wrong with punctuation, don't they?
Including native English speakers, I should say.
That's true, isn't it? So obviously an apostrophe is the little dash that goes above, isn't it? Like in Italian, it would be very similar, probably in French as well. It has Latin origins, apostrophe maybe.
Yes.
When would we get it wrong and when would we use it? It's very important, isn't it, to use apostrophes, especially in spoken English, I find, because we often shorten words, don't we?
Yes. Maybe we should start with its. I think it's a good way to start when you're doing apostrophes. There are two its, aren't they? IT apostrophe S and ITS.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe you want to explain the difference?
So IT apostrophe S means it is.
Mm-hmm.
I could say it is amazing. ITS without an apostrophe would be about possessive, wouldn't it?
IT apostrophe S could also be it has, I should add.
Oh, yes, that's a good point.
It's been a long time.
Oh, that's a good point. I missed that one out. So ITS without the apostrophe would be a possessive. So you could say this school, its geography department is amazing.
Yeah, it's been a long time since we did a podcast. Would be has, it has, it's been a long time.
Often I say this to students. I don't know if this would be fair, but for example, you say do not or don't. I would say don't is more common in spoken English. It's more natural, I would argue. Whereas do not is probably a bit more of an emphasis, isn't it?
Do not do that.
Exactly.
Yeah. So if you're speaking naturally, or you're writing naturally, you say don't, not do not. But if you're stressing the not, maybe you won't contract.
I think that covers most things, doesn't it? Was there anything else you wanted to add on that one?
It's has. You can check whether it's a contraction of has if there's a past participle after it, or if it's an adjective after it, it's probably it is. Mm-hmm. It is hot. It's hot. And if it's a noun, it could be possessive. The dog is wagging its tail. One
confusion, I think, with an apostrophe is whether it's a plural possessive, right? You would say James's book. James's can actually have apostrophe S after the name, or it can just have an apostrophe, right? Is that correct?
Exactly. We won't go to when, because even there are disagreements about whether you should put a second S or not. There's no consensus. Just be consistent, what you're right. If it's already an S there, you can just put the apostrophe, or you put first yes. Stick to one rule.
Yeah.
I should say also that native speakers often make a mistake with putting a plural with an apostrophe. It's even got a name. It's called the greengrocer's apostrophe or something like that. Buy our best bananas. And they put banana apostrophe S because they're not sure if it's going to be apostrophe there. So you often see that mistake in England where the apostrophe is there where it shouldn't, or should be there, but it isn't.
Because I always get confused when you say on a CV, I have 12 years experience, and you put the apostrophe after the S, don't you, on that one?
Yeah, why is that, John? It's 12 years experience. That's correct. It's after the S.
Because isn't that just because it's a plural possessive, right?
Yeah.
That's the reason why, isn't it?
That's right. It's a plural possessive. Some people are not sure whether to put an S or not. I'll see you in 2 weeks' time. 2 weeks. That's a plural, is it? Or is it possessive? And the way to know is use one. If it sounds correct, I'll see you in 1 week's time. Oh, yeah, still an S, so it must be a possessive.
That's a curious one and always good to look at.
I've been here for 2 weeks. That's plural.
There's no possessive.
I've been here for 1 week. Put it back into the singular. I've been here for 1 week. And you'll see that it can't be possessive.
That's true. Quotation marks, full stops and commas go inside the quotation marks, even if they aren't part of the material that is being quoted.
That's contentious.
Is it?
Some people say no, but generally there are differences of opinion.
I'd say if you're looking at a book, generally that would be the case, right?
Well, what about then a question mark?
Well, the question mark, I suppose it depends what you're talking about, because here it says his latest story is titled The Beginning of the End. Wouldn't a better title be The End of the Beginning? So obviously the question mark is outside the quotation mark.
Yeah, exactly. If the sentence has the question mark, is a question, then it'll be the end. If the quote has a question mark, then it will be before the quotation marks.
Yeah. Okay. So going on to brackets, parentheses. Would we say parentheses or brackets? Does it matter?
Usually brackets.
Usually brackets, isn't it?
Usually brackets. I think in formal situations, you might say parentheses. When you're talking about grammar and sentences, you'd say brackets. I think maybe in mathematics, you might say parentheses or some other situations.
Yeah, I guess in
that right?
mathematics, I think you're right. Yes.
Or in a URL or something. Maybe you can't put them. But anyway, in other situations, you could say parentheses.
It says like a parenthetical sentence exists on its own. Terminal punctuation goes inside the closing parentheses.
Fair enough.
Yeah, that is fair enough. I didn't know that one. So yeah, obviously if you've got brackets and it's the final thing of the sentence, the full stop goes inside the brackets. Hyphen. So you use a hyphen for compound adjectives. I think this is a nice one. I always talk about this one with students because it's like, for example, they say a 15-year-old boy, for example. You don't say 15 years old boy, do you? Because it's a compound adjective.
Exactly.
So you're kind of putting dashes, aren't you, between 15 year old.
I work a 35-hour week.
Yes.
Okay, so that'll have hyphens between the 35
hour. Exactly. Yeah. So you're obviously using it as an
not
adjective.
Between week, not before week, 35 hour.
Between 35 dash and then hour. So between those two. Obviously, if you're using it as a noun, then yes, you say 35 hours, of course. But as a compound adjective, you wouldn't. You would remove the S because adjectives don't have a plural.
Exactly.
Distinguish between the colon and the semicolon. This is always a tricky one, isn't it? So colon is two dots above each other, isn't it? The semicolon is a dot and a comma underneath.
A colon before a list, wouldn't you say? Sometimes both could be used, but I think colon before a list of things perhaps. And semicolon is sort of somewhere between a full stop and a comma. But you can get away with, if you have any doubt, you can get away with not using semicolons. I think I rarely use them, do use them sometimes.
Semicolon, the example it says here, only a third of Americans have a passport. And then you've got semicolon, the majority of Canadians have a passport. So it's creating a different clause, isn't it? They're related, but they're independent.
Yeah.
Okay. And as you said, with the colon, it's a list.
But if you're giving the items in a list, you can sometimes use semicolons. They're long examples rather than commas.
Okay. Yes.
Because within the examples, there may be commas, which will confuse things. They're not just one word examples from a list, because then you would use commas. But if it's long, you use semicolons.
So that was the first 5 of punctuation. We're going to do 5 more soon. So thanks very much for listening.